I'd like to talk about the worship of women and how it inevitably leads to the glorification of weakness. If you worship women, you have no choice but to glorify weakness. Now let me explain what it's that I'm talking about, which is the worship of women as well as the worship of weakness. And to tell you the truth, I'm talking about all of these things. I wasn't able to and still aren't able to communicate the full significance of what this actually means. However, I believe that it will become obvious. Therefore, if you are raised as a man in Western civilization, you will likely be taught to worship women. This is likely the case because worshiping women appears to be the default mode in Western civilization. You are going to be instructed in a specific manner, and you are going to be required to acknowledge and demonstrate specific behaviors, beliefs, and habits. And if you don't, you are aware that you will be punished, that you will be denied food, and that you will not survive. This is a traditional way of thinking with traditional values. And don't think that you'll be able to get out of it, and don't think that you'll be able to go your own way at such a young age. Because you are going to adopt the values of the culture, society, and group in which you are raised in order to get along and get ahead in that society. This is necessary in order for you to be raised in that society. And this is largely a traditional way of thinking, and that way of thinking is worshiping women, and it's understandable why people think this way, because doing so involves worshiping creation, and since the latter is what we eventually come to associate with attractiveness and worthiness, particularly for men, you can see why doing so can be a lot of fun. You know in your gut that saying men or women are equal to men is wrong because men adore women and worship them. But women are not treated equally by men. They have a biological need to be with the women, and they have a desire to make sacrifices for the women. This is part of what drives the men to change the face of the earth. They want to be with the women, and they want to make sacrifices for the women. This is the reason why you see so many skyscrapers. Because of this, you have bridges, and the reason you have the inventions that you do is largely because men want to create a world that is acceptable to women, and they want to gain status within the group of women. This is why you have bridges. This is why you have the inventions that you do. Why? Well, obviously so that they can have somebody to mate with. Therefore, when you say that men and women are equal, and that we are going to let women build bridges, what exactly do you mean? In the same way that we let men build bridges, when you say that, you undermine what's driving the men. Now you can understand what's driving this is driven by here's the worship of weakness. This is driven by the desire that women have to be able to compete with men and to have a positive self-image regarding the outcomes of their efforts. You're elevating and making a virtue out of the woman's weakness, and you are aware that this is an inversion of values. What you are doing is glorifying and making a virtue out of the woman's weakness. However, this shift in perspective did not begin with women asserting their equality with men. Rather, it was initiated by men who declared that women are every bit as capable as men. Therefore, you're aware that to continue the analogy, you are letting the women build the bridges with the men, and women aren't nearly as capable of doing so as men. You're going to say, however, that the emotions of the person building the bridge have a greater impact on the final product's quality, aren't you? Which are completely invisible to us in the end in comparison to the actual physical structure and qualities of the bridge. So now you've lifted the women up to the level of the men, but it's false. It is a fallacy. The feelings of the person designing the bridge contribute nothing of value, and those feelings should not be considered in the design process. It is something that you put on to give the impression of confidence to another person. And I hope that you all realize that when I talk about things like bridges and men and women, I'm really talking about anything that I'm talking about. You've probably heard people talk about things like medical school, flying an aeroplane, being a doctor, an engineer, a politician, or any other profession. If you find that statement to be harsh, it's possible that this is because, while it may not be accurate about each person individually, it is accurate about the group as a whole. When you structure your society in this manner, the price you pay is that the men elevate the status of women and the qualities that are associated with women. This is because it is true. And the women, just out of some sort of need to, inflate their own ego in the social environment, in the social environment. Start making a virtue out of their weaknesses because you can't insult the women and you can't find fault with the women. Start making a virtue out of their weaknesses. What's happening to people's rights to free speech and the core values that guide society is absolutely appalling. You are aware of what is right and see that this is the reality, the standards by which you are guided. You are aware of what is right. What's a virtue? What we want to pursue are being inverted, and the students are running the school. They don't want to do any homework, and you're being socially damaging to them. What we want to pursue and what we want to pursue are being inverted. If you make them do their homework, it is discrimination. Therefore, it is this constant placating to the weakness. By pretending that everybody is average, you take away all of the qualities that make anybody exceptional, which is not right. If we are all the same and we are all just as good as each other, then there certainly can't be anybody who is especially qualified. And that is what needs to be eradicated. And especially, so what a tragedy. So now everything gets dragged down to this level, right? and you understand that it's based on men wanting to please women, glorifying the weakness, and further understand that. And especially, well, so what a tragedy, so now everything gets dragged down to this level, right? This is a maladaptive strategy because it is analogous to rewarding students who do the least amount of work, tada, so that at the end you can determine when it is time to graduate the students who are supposed to be graduating. You are aware that professionals such as doctors, lawyers, and engineers are incompetent, that they are incapable of accomplishing anything, and that they cannot even control their own behavior. They are completely lacking in any form of self-control or self-awareness, and as a result, they require assistance right away. Does something like this sound familiar to you? I really hope that it does, because this is what we're going through right now, and you can see how it could be a great source of solace for someone who doesn't want to go out there and compete with one another in the open market, and you'll be able to understand why, if the criteria for a man being selected or acquiring a partner or building a good life for him include things like that. In any case, he gives up and adopts a geocentric system, which, if you're paying attention, should help you make sense of what's going on right about now. You are a man in a Mgto, and you are hearing this, and you are thinking to yourself, well, that's good knowledge. This is, as you probably already know, a trend in society, but like fish do in water, it also applies to both you and to me, because this is the environment in which we swim. These are the hunting grounds in which we sustain ourselves, and some of you might think that I'm being unfair to the women, but if you have a group of engineers, you should understand that this is the case, who are constructing a rocket in order to travel to Mars, but once you start inviting women into their group to work as administrative assistants, the female members begin to outnumber the male ones. They will start to act as though taking care of everyone's feelings is the most important thing within that group, and they will completely forget about building. The men will begin to pretend that this is the case. Those rocket ships to Mars will become completely unimportant, and what if you were to experience that on a societal level, as well as what if you were to experience that on a personal level as an individual man? What if this mentality of worshiping women and glorifying weakness, which also glorifies weakness, is undermining your own personal life and you are unable to change it? In other words, your capacity to perform a job and get that job done is not the deciding factor in your life, and I hope you are able to see how it would work out that way. No, what matters most is not your capacity to empathize and get along with other people, but rather your ability to convince somebody else to do those things on your behalf. The ability or skill that you see as a sin, in other words, strength and independence as well as being extraordinary and exceptional, becomes something that is singled out and punished. Because if you demonstrate that ability, you will be showing up the people who don't have those abilities, so you can see how it is maladaptive to take that away to say, those people won't have those abilities. Oh well, everybody's pretty much the same, nobody's really better than anybody else, and we're just going to give everybody a passing grade and a diploma in brain surgery because there isn't much of a difference between them. Because we wouldn't want to cause anyone's feelings to be hurt. We decided that even if you don't complete your assignments, we'll still award you with a diploma. Oh, you are unable to maintain control over what you consume within a period of 24 hours. Oh, well, we won't comment on that even if you become so overweight. You can't even go through a doorway because that would be unethical. Therefore, do you see how this worshipping of women and wanting to please everyone is related to wanting to make everyone happy? And treating everyone the same is a form of worshipping weakness. It's also maladaptive. You can see that nature and the environment are not like that. Another way of putting that is, nature worships strength. If you are not robust enough, and if you do not have the skills necessary to survive in the real world and in nature, then you will not survive if you are unable to find food and if you are unable to construct a safe haven for yourself. You don't get food and you don't have a shelter, so you don't continue and you don't survive. That's evolution. That's how we grow strong now. That's how we grow immensely strong. That's how we build our cities and get our technology right. I'm still waiting on my personal jetpack so that I won't have to get up and do things. Instead, I'll just be able to fly over there instead. In the meantime, don't forget to donate, people. All right, and if you can't donate, just. We could therefore compare this situation to that of a hardworking and practical guy who meets an extremely attractive but extremely dim-witted woman, and the guy appeases the woman. He just goes along with it and says things like, yeah, that sounds pretty good despite the fact that she is saying some of the most ridiculous things in the world. Because all he wants to do is, have a few drinks with her and spend some time alone with her, and he'll say pretty much anything. I'm sure that we could figure that out and get that done. And then once it is finished, he thinks that he will go on his way on his merry way, but he won't because she's going to follow him and she's going to say that you did this and that you owe me that. And if you don't do that, I'm going to use my status as the only female member of the group to make it so that you can't really do the things you think you can do or that you imagine you can do in this society. So these guys who are giving you this advice, pump and dump, just don't worry about it. You think you can do or that you imagine you can do in this society. You should just have some light conversations with women and move on with your life. She's going to accuse you of a crime. She's going to attack your social circle. That is the same as telling a male spider to go ahead and go into the web of a black widow spider so that they can have their fun. She's going to do both of those things. And then just, move on like she's going to let you do that. She's not going to. The mindset itself is adapted towards not even seeing the danger. And you know that I promised that I would talk about where all of this leads. Do you see where it leads? Also, the reason I didn't want to just blurt it out is because I see where the worship of weak women who need to be cared for can lead to the glorification and worship of weakness. You see where I'm getting at? And the fact that this is completely unsuitable for its environment because nature does not function in this manner, but we are the ones who build the tools, the civilized society that we men control. We are capable of building and we have built. Therefore, now we are going to pretend those women, the weak, the dependent, the stupid, and the lazy are just as good as the powerful and capable man. Some people act like being a man is, like it's a thing. And they don't realize that it's a process, that it's this adaptive process of overcoming obstacles in the real world. The strong and capable man, it's not as simple as saying, oh, he has a lot of money, so he must be a big man. Instead, he needs to keep working hard to earn that money, protect that money, and build that money up. And this happens almost every time he says something along the lines of, oh, well, I'm just going to take it easy and because. It's not very adaptive of me to feel weak right now. What I think it's important for you to understand how a man becomes strong by confronting reality and overcoming challenges, and how this is how the process of evolution works. Only the strong survive. And then we become so powerful that we are now able to control the environment, and we come to worship sensuality, sexuality, and the indulgence of material wants and needs, which you can understand. We have shown how capable we are as men and as Mtao by overcoming the challenges posed by the physical environment. That is what we have accomplished in regard to that. Now, as a species, we have begun to indulge, and the values have begun to shift toward worshiping those things that bring us pleasure and avoiding those things that bring us discomfort, which are challenging, which is a sign of weakness. And as a result, we become weaker and weaker in every facet of our lives, including our personal lives, our political lives, and our social lives. Therefore, the worship of women, as well as the worship of weakness, as well as the inversion of these values, is the path that leads to death. It is the path that leads to ruin, and it is the path that leads to dependence. It is the path that leads to the construction of a society based on dependence, with nobody to supply the necessary skills. And the trick and the lie is to continue to get the men to worship the women, to worship their weakness, and to supply the resources to do the work, to do the dangerous work, to come up with the inventive. This is all part of the plan to get the men to continue worshiping the lie. You have undermined the male's ability to do so, and you have demonized those very qualities, not you, but society. This process demonizes those very masculine qualities. New solutions to defend the borders, and you have also demonized those very masculine qualities. We're born right into it. And it's a process that the men are going along with it. The man goes along with it. So therefore, it's a hell of a process to be trapped in, and you're born right into it. However, this is the automatic method that is used to bring him up. He is not taught the skills necessary to be an independent, powerful man. You should be aware that it is deliberately concealed from him. It's a complicated topic, and I'm sure I'll discuss it once more in the future. But for the time being, I'm just going to leave it at that.